Welcome to the 12 Days of Christmas Coping, brought to you by the Write or Die Show.
Hi, I'm Kristina Rienzi, a best-selling and award-winning author of fiction and nonfiction, and I am here to talk to you about coping with grief during the holidays. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, my debut self-help book, 5 Happy Choices, The Simple Way to a Happier Life, was a #1 new release and bestseller. My latest novel, Among Us, was also a bestseller and was chosen to be featured on the ACX University and selected as an Audible Editor's Select Pick. So I write really to inspire and empower others in both my self-help books and my thrillers alike. I want my readers to embrace the unknown, step out of their comfort zone, face their fears, and triumph over them. I hope they'll be inspired to take control of their life, one choice at a time, and emerge as their most empowered and happy selves. I'm also a certified professional coach, as you may have heard in my intro, with some of the things that I focus on, with advanced education in psychology, coaching, leadership, and happiness studies. You may have heard it called positive psychology or the science of well-being. So whether I'm writing, leading, or coaching, my focus is always on inspiring and empowering others to make choices that benefit their psychological wellness. And that's why I'm here today talking to you. So even though happiness is my focus, I also live with grief and loss every day. I lost my mom almost 10 years ago now. And so to many people, that may seem like a long time. And they may wonder, why is she still grieving? Why is the grief still around? But to anyone who has had a profound loss, 10 years is the blink of an eye. I'm also the person who happens to absolutely love the holidays. I love this holiday season more than most. I'm the one who puts up her Christmas tree right after Halloween. It may take me a month to decorate it, but as soon as it goes up, it's bringing me joy. And with every ornament, and every twinkle light, and every nostalgic decoration, grief is still never far from my heart or mind. It's only one memory, one tear away this time of year, and I'm sure many of you who are listening to this can relate to that. So the joy of the holiday season is often overshadowed by the pang of loss in my heart and sadness for what will never be again. So my coping mechanism is to hunt for the happiness. I do all the things that bring me joy to somehow make suffering the loss bearable, especially this time of year. So to help you also navigate this tricky time of year, I'm sharing coping mechanisms to manage your grief, whether your loved one has passed recently or many years ago, like mine. I love the quote by Doug Manning, who says, "Grief is not a process of forgetting. It is a process of learning to cope while we remember." I thought that was so fitting to explain grief as a learning experience based on coping. It's not about eliminating the grief, right? It's learning to live with it as an active part of our lives, because it is. To understand how to cope with grief, we must understand grief itself. What is grief? And so I have experienced grief in both my personal life, as I mentioned, and in doctoral school for clinical psychology. We learned a lot about grief and grieving and its effect on the body and the mind and life and psychology, right? But all of that is helpful to me. It's really great to know the facts and the science, but it doesn't make my grief hurt any less than the next person. It's still painful. So to understand grief is to understand love, right? When our loved one passes, our love morphs into grief. It's an expression of love. It's that sadness living under our love and joy. It's our love in a new, unfamiliar form. So it takes time to navigate that and get used to that. Grief is the embodiment of our love, not only in our hearts and minds, but in our bodies. It's a physical pain. It's a physical feeling, a physical change. And we feel that pain physically as much as we do mentally and emotionally. And anyone who has had a profound loss can attest to that. So we're longing for that last time we were together with our loved one, seeing their smiling face, holding their hand, hugging, or just sharing in a simple conversation. Grief can be all-encompassing at times, and it can also come in waves. It can knock the breath out of us, feel like a giant rock sitting on our chest. It can also make us weep so heavily that no sound comes out. It can trap us in a nightmare that is so surreal, we wake up to our grim reality every day. Whether it's new or old, grief is the pain of longing for what will never be again. We never get over a profound loss. We carry it with us into the rest of our lives. But grief can also make us feel so deeply that our love is highlighted beyond what we ever imagined. It can make us see so clearly what is most important in our lives, now and in our memories of our loved one. It can pull us closer to them, even in their death. There's a duality to grief, the pain and the bitterness and the bittersweetness, the love and the loss, right? The sadness and the joy. There's both sides. Because grief happens on many levels and becomes an integral part of who we are. We don't just grieve the loss of the person and their physical presence. We grieve the loss of our future without them, the gifts they gave to the world, and the person we were when they were in our lives. So grief changes us. We navigate life a little differently. There's a before and an after defined, and we have to figure out a new way of living, our new normal. We don't get over loss. We carry it with us. It lasts as long as our love did, a lifetime. The holidays, because of all this, can be very bittersweet. It can bring to light all of our treasured memories of the past, the pain of missing our loved one, and not being able to share in the holiday season and traditions with them. Our hearts are broken, yet we are profoundly reminded that life goes on, even though it doesn't feel like it does for us. We wear the memories and the tears and hold them close to our hearts, which are forever broken without them here. Their death was the end of their physical life, but not the love we shared. That's an important thing to remember when we're in pain. So we cling on to that love as we cling onto the grief and loss. The balance between grief and happiness is mine and ours, really, at every turn. So coping with grief at the holidays is all about finding the happiness underneath the sadness in any way we can. It doesn't negate the sadness or take it away. Coping with grief is about making choices to focus on what brings us joy, even when the sadness is present. It's not about overriding the grief, but living in the duality of it. And making happy choices is the first step. To cope with grief is to embrace it. Give yourself grace. Understand your love is now grief. Allow yourself to embody the pain so you can release it. Don't ignore it. Don't shut it away or try to put your grieving off. It will be waiting for you. It demands to be acknowledged. And once it's acknowledged and nurtured, you can find the joy in the sorrow. It may seem counterproductive or impossible to choose happiness while grieving as the holidays approach and doing that as a coping mechanism. However, when you learn to reframe how you define happiness during your grief, it becomes simple and also cathartic. So I'm going to share my 5 happy choices and how they will help you cope with grief at the holidays. These are proven methods backed by science that have worked for me on my darkest days. I hope they will help you cope with grief during the holiday season. Number 1, choose kindness. Kindness increases happiness. There is a direct connection, a feedback loop between them, if you will. When we are kind, we feel good. When we feel good, we are kind. So how can we choose kindness to choose happiness when we are grieving? Directly relate your kindness to the loved one you're missing. What kind acts would they have performed if they were here? Choose one and do it in their honor. For example, my mom was a gift giver. She thought of everyone, from doctors and nurses helping her with her treatment to all of her coworkers. Even a small gift, especially at the holidays, was her act of kindness, and it brought her so much joy. I remember the Christmas before she passed. She was very sick, but still bought and wrapped gifts for all the doctor's offices and everyone at her job. We loaded up my car and we delivered them right before the holidays. It wasn't about the money she spent, because the gifts were small gestures, but about the kindness that filled her heart and the hearts of others when she gave them a little something to let them know she cared. Now, I've become my own kind of Mrs. Claus in her honor, doing more than I've ever done at the holidays to bring a little bit of my mom's kindness to the world. So you don't have to perform a grand gesture. Your act of kindness could be a conversation with someone at the coffee shop or at the checkout line at the supermarket. It could be holding a door for an elderly person, sending a text to a friend to check in on them. It can be anything that makes you feel like you're sharing the kindness of your loved one who's passed. So you're doing what they couldn't do, and you're sharing that kindness. And I promise you, if you do that in their honor and with them in mind, it will bring you joy, and you will feel like you're honoring the one you love who is no longer here. So, number 1, choose kindness. Number 2, choose gratitude. Gratitude increases happiness. We've heard this so much before, haven't we? Writing down what you're most grateful for, focusing on the things that, you have gratitude for and you're thankful for, make you feel good, bring you joy, bring you happiness. And that is so true. And there is a direct connection between being grateful and being happy. Happy people are also more grateful. It goes hand in hand. So how can we relate gratitude to our grief? This is a hard one. It's hard to find things to be grateful for when you're grieving, when your loved one is no longer with you. You may feel thankless for what has happened, and that is totally normal. Life can feel unfair when you lose someone you love so dearly. It can be difficult to find anything to appreciate when your world has turned upside down. But if you can focus on your loved one and really think about your time together, your memories, your love, I am certain you will find slices of gratitude in there. Even if your gratitude is solely dependent upon the past you shared together, that's okay. It's okay when you're grieving to focus on what was, finding that feeling in your heart that you shared. You must find your happiness where you can in these sad times. And sometimes it's directly connected to being thankful they were in your life at all. Being grateful for the time you did have, the love you shared, and the memories you will treasure for a lifetime. I remember when I lost my mom, I was so angry. While it's totally normal to be angry, that's part of grief, I found it very difficult to focus on gratitude at all. But I talked to some friends to work through that, and I realized that my relationship with my mom was very special. It was grounded in a deep love, and not everyone gets to experience that kind of love in their lifetime. So, I recognized that even though I was in deep pain and I was mad that she was no longer here with me, I was also very thankful that we shared such a profound love, one that would carry me through the rest of my life without her. If you're feeling this way too, think about the love. The love you shared can lead to gratitude, and gratitude to happiness. So choose gratitude. Number 3, choose connection. Connection increases happiness. We are social beings. Even the introverts among us, which is including me, we all need other people. But during grief, this can be another challenge, right? We want to hide away. We don't want to interact socially for so many reasons. And that's completely normal. It takes a lot of energy and courage to be social during grief. It's hard to connect with everyone because not everyone has experienced deep grief, or understands it. Grief can even create a barrier to connection because it may make others uncomfortable. So to avoid that discomfort, what do? We hide our pain away. We either don't connect at all or we connect superficially. And this pulls us further away from what we need most, which is to be with others who understand us, and from happiness that we need at such a painful time and what we're going through. So the deep and meaningful connections are what we need. And that is what increases our happiness during grief. It's not just any connection. It's a deep and meaningful connection. So think about that. You have a lot of gatherings at the holidays, right? And your grief may be under the spotlight, especially if it's recent. So remember to seek out others who you can naturally connect to through the grief. It may be someone who loves you so dearly, they're committed to being there for you during this time, or every year at this time. It could be someone who's experienced deep grief themselves. Or maybe it's someone who's grieving the same person you are, and you can connect with them over that. And, all grief isn't the same, right? It's unique to the relationship with the person that you had and the person that's gone and the relationship you had. You can connect with others, though, on the pain of loss if they've had a loss as well. You can connect on memories you shared and the joy of what once was. So those are all ways you can connect with others while you're grieving at the holidays. And, maybe connecting with grief isn't about connecting with someone for you at this time. You're not ready or it's not for you, but you want to connect to a family holiday tradition in their honor. For me, it's watching Hallmark Christmas movies, which seems so silly, but I started in October. My mom absolutely loved them, and they bring me so much joy doing something that she would be doing at this time of year. It makes me feel closer to her. I feel happy. It's bittersweet, but that's what brings me that joy and happiness. And, I encourage you to find someone that you can deeply connect with over your grief this holiday season, whether it's a little thing you might share, a text. Sometimes sending a note on social media or a text message is so cathartic. Just a little memory or how you're feeling. That connection is helpful when it's with someone who understands you and grief. Also find something you can connect to that brings you closer to your loved one this holiday season. Something that maybe you did together or that you want to do in their honor, so that the connection with others and things will bring you closer to your loved one and the comfort and closeness that you need to help heal your broken heart. So as hard as it may be, choose connection this holiday season. Number 4, choose presence. So, and that's Presence. Presence with a T is good too, but presence. Being present increases happiness. When you're grieving, especially at the holiday season with so much going on, it's easy to get lost in everything going on around you, right? The twinkle lights, the baked goods, the memories, you find running down your face in the form of tears. And while all that is happening, you may be missing out on what's going on around you, right? And it may be difficult to be in the present moment and enjoy the present moment because it becomes a stark reminder of the person you love not being there to share it with you. So it's easy to effortlessly get lost in your thoughts and that pain of grief instead of reveling in the present moment around you. But when we don't immerse ourselves in the present moment, we are losing out on opportunities to live our lives. As hard as it is, I look at it this way. I'm doing all the living that my loved one can. That's how I force myself to be present, right? So in my mom's honor, I am here as she would be in the present moment, enjoying the people, the festivities, the love, even if that means I need to excuse myself a few times to cry in the bathroom. I do what I have to do, right? I'm not ignoring the grief, but I want to be present and feel the love and feel the joy. And it's all okay and part of the grieving process. This is all about learning to live without them. And that's what's so painful about it. But if you find it difficult to be present, and that is one of the hard things, let your mind wander to your loved one, right? Imagine them sitting next to you. What would they be doing? What would they be saying? How would they be enjoying the moment, right? Can you do the same thing? Can you bring yourself to? If you do it for them in their honor, you will feel the joy of their love and life. Being present will now have meaning and bring you the glimmer of happiness you so deserve this time of year. So try it. Try being present. Finally, number 5, which is hard as well, is choose authenticity. Authenticity increases happiness. It does. It's backed by science, right? Being your authentic, true self brings you joy and happiness because it is honoring your natural state of being. It can be difficult to be authentic in a world that wants you to be a certain way, right? It's true with the holidays also. There are expectations from all sides, right? You've got society, social media, family, friends, colleagues, fitting into a mold that has been created for us. This is true all year long, but especially at the holidays, and especially when there's grief, right? And many times that's fine, right? We fill a role, we go through the motions, we make it work. However, when we are grieving, all bets are off. Fitting into someone's expectation of us can seem impossible. Holding back the tears, showing up with joy and smiles can prove futile, right? When our hearts are broken in so many pieces. But if you can find the courage to choose authenticity, you can release those expectations. Express yourself the way you need to for your healing. Feel good, even if in brief moments. Authenticity may be something as simple as saying you're not feeling up to a particular celebration. Speaking up for yourself is authentic. It could be staying a short time at a gathering because that's all you can handle. Maybe being authentic is dropping off presents and staying home. It's whatever you need to be true to yourself. Authenticity is all about being true to who you are and what you need. It looks different for everyone, but honoring it makes all the difference. Sometimes the best thing you can do is slow down, take care of your broken heart, and let everything else fall aside. Being happy looks different during grief, as it should. And when we choose happiness as a way to cope with grief, authenticity is at the heart of it all. We must do what is best for us during this fragile time. And only we know what that is. Only you know what that is. No matter what anyone says, you know what's best for you deep in your heart. I promise you, being authentic, honoring yourself and your grief, especially at the holidays, is how you can choose happiness as a form of healing. I hope my 5 happy choices encourage you to take some chances and try them and be able to cope with grief at the holidays a little differently than maybe you have in the past or that you thought you could during this holiday season especially. And remember, when you choose happiness, despite it all, you're choosing you, which is the way to heal your heart. So, I hope that was helpful. On to the Christmas book. Of course, now that I just talked about 5 happy choices, I will talk about why I recommend it as a book you may want to check out for the holidays. 5 happy choices and my accompanying 5 happy choices journal. I feel like it is a gift of happiness that you're giving. It's an act of kindness for anyone grieving this holiday season. And, my book goes into a little bit more than what I've spoken about here. It's about the science behind happiness, choices you can make, but also it asks questions, and the journal helps keep you on track to create a habit of choosing happiness, which is really what we're going for here, is to make it part of our daily lives, right? I dive into these 5 simple proven methods that are backed by science to help lead a happier life. And I use my education, my experience, my advice to highlight how simple it is to make these choices that have the power to unleash happiness. And, it's a way for me to inspire and empower you to try it Try this as a technique and see if it works for you. And even if one of them works for you, it's better than none, right? You try something and see what works for you. And I give some action plans in there. They're simple. How to identify and unleash your happiness in everyday moments. The journal's supplemental. It's a workbook for your practice of happiness. And I have action plans in there, good for a full month for you to practice so it becomes a habit. And, that's where, I think that it changes from just a tool to part of your everyday. And, for me, regardless of what's going on in the world and what was going on within us and in our lives and how hard life can be at times, I believe happiness is a lifelong journey, and we make it one choice at a time. And I just want to say thank you so much for letting me share my knowledge and experiences with you. And I hope this holiday season brings you health, love, peace, and most of all, happiness. Be well.
Thanks for watching the 12 Days of Christmas Coping. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly.